quick video today. As you can see, I have taken the carburetor out. 4 studs with 11mm nuts on them. The ones on this side, oops, these two here are okay to get to. The ones on the far side here, closest to the rocker cover, are somewhat more difficult. Let's come around this side. But okay, this is I got in here with the air filter and the rubber connection at the carb out of the way, with an open-ended 11mm spanner, which you could just get enough on to get both of these loosened off from this side here. You can buy a kind of a special crowfoot spanner, and I did think about that, but some of those people had taken this rocker cover off anyway to use those, and I was going to take the rocker cover off because I thought I'll never get them in, but I just managed to get enough on it to get these off. Now these are never done up, or shouldn't be done up very tight, so that certainly helped. So that is off. The hardest thing actually was pulling this choke cable through its little hole on the side of the carb. Somebody helpfully had bent the end of it, but trying to get that thick wire straight enough to pull through was a real pain. But I've not had to take the rocker cover off, which is good. And the reason behind this was that the car was running rough, essentially. Sometimes not idling well, needing lots of throttle to get started, etc, etc. Only really pulling away when you're giving it lots of gas, which was not brilliant. And as soon as I took the carb off, which we have here, I discovered this jet rattling about. You're not going to be able to see in here, I don't think, with a light, but it was rattling about in the bottom of the jet down there, the barrel down there. Fortunately, not got into the intake system, but perhaps not far off. My only concern is if there was a pigeon's going mental behind me, perhaps a washer on the bottom of that. I think it's come out of there. Again, you can't quite see that out there. I'm not up on my carbs. I've got an exploded diagram, so I'm going to need to go and check this out. I think that's where it's come from. I hope it's profiled there, so I hope it was just a seat and there wasn't a washer or something that's gone AWOL and into the intake. If it has, too late now. But I thought I'd post this anyway. So you can get these carbs off without resorting to special tools, I think, if you're lucky. Everything else looks clean down there, but I've got new gaskets for this, so I'm gonna take it inside and give it a clean up and a blow through and refit this. So the carburetor is now stripped down and cleaned. 4 screws such as this holding the 2 parts together, and this throttle connecting rod that goes up to the main butterfly. This just unclips, you push a little clip up there and comes off, and that gets that out of the way there. This is the just the bracket for that holds the choke cable on, that bolts on the side there. Just got that off to get it out of the way, and the 2 parts come apart quite easily. The observant amongst you will have noticed that this is a carburetor for a hydraulic gearbox. You can see on this side the big auxiliary air screw for the second idle level there, and a cover plate that's been put on where the hydraulic attachment goes on. This carburetor is a DLE2. There should be a tab on the bottom around about here, I think, or here, which shows the type of carb it is, but it's also, which is less easy to spot, engraved on the bottom face of the top half, or sorry, the bottom half of the carburetor. This is the side that faces the front wing, and this is, see, stamped in here, a 2836 DLE2. The carb that should be on here is a DLE A2, and the only difference is these attachments, the attachment for the hydraulic control here, and this auxiliary air screw, which is screwed all the way in, because that's not something that we need. This was on the car when I got it. I don't know the history of the carburetor. There is a reference in the service history to this carb being fitted as a refurbished carb. How refurbished that is, I don't know. I think the only other slight difference between the versions for automatic, sorry, semi-automatic and manual cars is the idle jet, one of the idle jets being slightly larger. But that's pretty marginal stuff. I gave the bodies a degrease, and I got a soft brass cup for my Dremel, and gave the bodies just a bit of clean up. There was a little bit of oxidation in the bottom of the float chamber there. I don't know whether it had a bit of water in it sometime, but I cleaned that off there, and critically reattached the main jet, main throttle jet in there. Actually, it's the accelerator pumps, I think, jet that are sometimes referred to in there. So that's back in, and generally giving it the whole thing a bit of a clean up. One thing that I did then was to obviously check that there's no holes in the float, which there wasn't or isn't, and then there's a small pin just here that you push out to take the float off, and then you can get underneath there to the main valve jet for filling the float chamber. The refurb kit that I got came with a replacement one of those, and this is the old one here, and you can see that needle valve sits in there. That's screwed in like that into the body of the carb, and going around the arm of the float is this little pin here. I think they call it a spring on the diagram. You can get these exploded diagrams, which are quite helpful. It's called a spring, but it's really a pin. I don't know whether it's so fine. I don't know if it's going to show up at all here. But one thing I noticed was the replacement was worked a different way. Sorry, I had that in the wrong way around. That sits in like that. Have the needle pointing up. The needle obviously goes down into the body of that. There is a slight groove on this one, but it's difficult to tell whether that's wear or supposed to be there. Looks like it goes all the way around, but it's anyway. As I had a replacement, I decided to put it in, but there's a difference. This pin here goes through a hole on the needle, the needle valve, like that, so it hangs, and the arm, the top of that clip goes around the base of the float, so when the float goes up and down, it pulls this up and down with it, like that. And the replacement doesn't have that. The replacement looks like it's just relying on, you can just see the needle valve in there. It's basically just relying on the pressure of the float coming up and gravity letting it drop down again. Now, I don't know which way is better or not. The shape of the needle itself, the needle valve was slightly different. This one here's got 3 sides to it, and the other, I think, the new one had 4. But anyway, it fitted in just the same. One thing to be aware of is the kits come with a washer, a little washer to go on the base of the body on the threaded end, and the way it's a very thin washer, it's perhaps only a mil thick, and it actually just looked like it was part of the body of the carb, and I almost missed the old one coming off and getting the new one on. I was beginning to think that the new one was for something else. So that's the needle valve for the float done. You also need to take the float off to fit the new gasket on. So that gasket is on, ready for the 2 halves to be screwed back together. In terms of the bottom part of the body of the carb, when you look at these exploded diagrams, they can look quite intimidating, and I've not taken the carb fully apart before, and I don't intend to start now. If it ain't broke, don't fix it and all that. But what I did do was take out just the main jets here. They just screw out, blow them through and check that they're working okay. And the emulsion tubes are underneath those, and just tip them out. There's other jets at the bottom of the float chamber there. Took those out, blew those through, and just checked all these other screws were tight and correct, took them out, saw what was behind there. Nothing sprang out, bits didn't fly anywhere. So I'm just wondering if that is screwed, this one here is screwed in properly. Yeah, that is. So nothing exploded or came apart. I didn't get into taking out the main control rod for the butterflies, but they were all seemed to be seated properly, so I wasn't too fussed about those. All that mechanism all seemed to be working. I did wonder about how to get this accelerator throttle pump out, and you'll see that there's a slot in the side, perhaps just here, and this brass plate at the top is just an interference fit, so that just levers out, and then you can take the pump out. There was a little bit of muck in there, so I cleaned that out, and it all seems to be tickety-boo. The other thing I did, of course, was to put this on the base on a flat surface. These bases are notorious for warping, so I had a mirror that I put this down against, and you can check with a feeler gauge, or put a straight edge, a steel rule or something against it, is another way, of course. But that all looks to be in good nick. This is the old gasket here, and there was a slight break in it, but nothing I think would have really affected performance. That would just be sat on there, so where the break is just in between the two chokes. So that's been replaced. The other thing is the kit comes with these very small little rubber O-rings, and it's difficult to see where they, well, there's one at the bottom of this throttle lever that links up to the top. There's one at the bottom there, and then there's another one at the top here. That was missing on mine, but I spotted it on the parts diagram, so that's where those two goes, just to keep the connections tight. And that was it. The only thing that the kit doesn't come with, or the one I bought anyway, which I think was from DeFranco's, is that this is this side here, this cover plate. I think they call it an inspection plate. There's a piston in there that moves in relation to the choke. Exactly what it does, I don't know, but that's what it does when the choke closes. There's a piston that gets pushed up into there. There's a gasket behind that. It didn't come with that gasket, but it's unlikely that would be gone, I think. But it's a relatively simple shape to cut if need be. The other thing that I noticed in doing all of this was that this is the base plate here, which should in theory stop the base of the carb getting too hot and fuel evaporating, etc., and warping. That there's no gaskets on this, but the kit comes with two new gaskets to put either side of that for when it goes back on the car. So that's it. Just need to put these two halves back together, and the car, it's ready to go back on the car. As I say, I didn't take anything majorly apart, just one jet at a time, so I didn't have parts scattered all about the place. Because these explode diagrams can look quite scary when you look at all the little bits, and I wasn't into having all that scattered about the place. I think if I really needed to get this whole carb refurbished, I'd send it off somewhere. But you can get individual parts online for these if you need them, if there's something obvious that's fixed, to be fixed. So I think I'm quite pleased with that. Oh, one other thing before I forget, measuring the movement of this float. When it's down like that, the gap between the float and the bottom of the float and the top of the gasket is to be 4.75 mil. And then when it's this way around, that gap is to be 11.5 mil. That gap 11.5 mil with a 0.1 mil tolerance according to the guidebook. Now, the only thing with that is that it's actually a little bit tricky to measure. I've got a set of digital calipers, but getting those over this lip, the point that is a little bit tight, but you can't get it exactly on, but close enough, and that seemed to be an adjustment, which was a relief, because the way to adjust it is there's two tabs on the base of this float, which you bend to adjust the bottom and top clearance of that float. But with such precise measurements, I've envisaged sitting bending that not quite enough, then a little bit too much, and then not quite enough, and a little bit too much, and going back and forth like that. But it was exactly 4.75 and 11.5 when I measured it with these calipers. I did do another check with a steel rule as well, which is a bit easier to get in, but you really need to get you can put a little lolly stick on it, across the base of the carb with a float there, just rest on the float so it'd stick out a little bit, and you can get your calipers in or your ruler in to measure it at the edge. A little bit faffy, but all good. So I'll get this put back together and back on the car. So as you can see, we've got the carb reinstalled, the fuel line back on, these 4 11mm nuts holding on, new gaskets on the heat seal down there,